Friends and colleagues, good evening from Labuan Bajo, Flores, Indonesia. My name is Paul Rahmat. I am Indonesian, a member of the Society of the Divine Word, and affiliated with Vivat International. On behalf of the planning team, I welcome everyone, our esteemed speakers, friends, colleagues, and all participants to this virtual event featuring the screening of the Big Fish film and a panel discussion. I take this opportunity to acknowledge the co-sponsoring organizations that work hand in hand to make this event possible. Vivat International, Justice Coalition for Religious JCOR, NGO Committee on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples, GPIC Commission of USG and UISG, Proclade Internationale, Passionis International, Dominican Leadership Conference, World Christian Life Community, and the Dewan Adat Papua. In particular, we acknowledge and commend the magnificent and inspiring works of the Indonesian film producers, the eminent filmmaker and journalist Bung Dandi Dwi Laksono, and the anthropologist Sipri Paju Dale. Thanks to their generosity and hard work in providing the 1 hour cut of the film and granting us access to watch it. In observance of the International Day of the World's Indigenous Peoples, we are offering a virtual screening of Pig Feast, Colonialisms in Our Time, for a broader global audience, followed by an interactive panel discussion. Pig Feast is an investigative documentary exposing military-backed development projects and their devastating impact on people and the environment in the Indonesian's controlled province of West Papua. Claiming to ensure food security and produce bioenergy from sugarcane and palm oil, these so-called national strategic projects threaten indigenous Papuan territory, one of the world's remaining intact biodiversity reserves, now known as the lungs of the earth. Moreover, the military operation that runs alongside the mining operation has forced an estimated 105,000 to 106,000 Papuans to flee their homes as internally displaced persons and refugees. The film also portrays the way indigenous communities, predominantly comprised of Christians of various denominations, have resisted those projects by revitalizing indigenous culture and mobilizing Christian symbols and values by planting thousands of customary barricades and Christian crosses painted in red to block the projects. Known as the Red Cross Movement, the film depicts the significance of this movement, with culture and faith forming the basis for indigenous resilience and resistance. In the face of repression by Indonesian authorities, the film has broken the silence and triggered solidarity across Indonesia and the world. Thousands of community screenings have been organized in Indonesia, drawing global attention to what is currently unfolding in West Papua. The film is not merely a story for the world to watch. According to the producers, this film strives to amplify the cry for help, the crisis of the indigenous peoples of Papua and of Mother Earth, our common home. It is an urgent call for actions of solidarity and compassion. Responding to this call, faith-based NGOs at the United Nations organized a virtual screening of Big Fish colonialisms in our time, to be immediately followed by an action-oriented panel discussion. It is our hope and goal that this virtual event we are offering is able to first draw attention to the current humanitarian and environmental crisis in West Papua, as well as to identify concrete actions to be undertaken by civil society networks, religious congregations, and indigenous groups to support the best interests of the people and environment of West Papua. We are now pleased to invite you all to watch the film simultaneously on your respective devices. Enjoy the film and have an engaging, fruitful panel discussion. Thank you. Yeah, welcome back to our Zoom meetings, and I offer this now to Roy as our moderator to lead these discussions. Roy, please.
Thank you, Paul, and welcome back, everyone. I am Roy Thomas, UN representative of Vivad International in New York. I am sure the film has touched each one of us in different ways. It was painful to see indigenous communities in West Papua losing their land and forests in the name of development. We heard one of them saying, "We are not thieves. We have never stolen anything from others. We have never cried to our fathers and mothers. We cry to you, God. We are weak." It shows the helplessness of people in West Papua. For them, the land is not just property, it is their home, their culture, their history, and their source of life. But the film also showed us their courage. Through the Red Cross movement, they are using their traditions and Christian faith to protect their land and defend their dignity. The film leaves us with a simple but important question. Can we really call it development if it destroys people, communities, and nature? So to begin our panel discussion, I am happy to introduce Dr. Sibri Pajudail, one of the co-directors of Big Feast. Cypri is a socio-cultural anthropologist who has worked closely with indigenous communities in West Papua and other parts of Indonesia. He completed his PhD at the Institute of Social Anthropology at Bern University, Switzerland. His work focuses on indigenous rights, development, culture, faith, and the relationship between people and nature. He has authored a number of publications. As one of the filmmakers, Cypri can help us better understand the stories, the struggles, and hopes behind the film. So, Cypri, thank you for being with us today. We now invite you to share your opening remarks in response to the film. Cypri, you have 4 minutes to speak, and the floor is yours. Over to Cypri.
Thank you so much, Father Roy. Hi, everyone. It is a great honor for me and my co-director to be invited in this such important screening and virtual discussion. The film has been screened in more than 5,000 places like this, and we know that this screening and discussion is one of the most strategic screening that we already had in our mind when we do the final editing of the film. We deliberately make a film to reach out to people like yourselves, the people of faith with international network in a position that we believe can be a game changer to the situation that people on the ground, like West Papua in our case here, are happening. We prayed during the preparation of the film that this film will reach people like you, and we are really glad that in less than 3 months it happened. So thank you so much. As an anthropologist and filmmaker, I have never witnessed faith in crosses like what is happening in West Papua. People do believe that they can confront colonialism, confront militarism, extractivism, the violence to human and Mother Earth, and all the creations by putting crosses. So it is a huge act of faith, and I have never witnessed act of faith like this. But I have also never seen such local indigenous Christian communities being neglected by the church, by the rest of the Christian Catholic communities, like what is happening in West Papua. The movement has been for years their cry for help, but still for us or who claim to be the voice of the voiceless, these people are not voiceless. They cried for years already. It is the voice that is voiceless. So I have never also witnessed a neglected Christian community like in West Papua, both from local churches like in the film, but also from Indonesian Christian and church leaders, but also maybe from international communities. We are not loud enough in the middle of this cry for help. But we frame the film not as a critic, because who we are to criticize the church and the people of faith. We frame the film deliberately as a cry for help to the church, cry for help to the rest of Indonesian community, including from other religions, cry for help from those in power. But we know that cry for help from ancestor and God, it is called prayer. So that's why we always we put a lot of moment of prayers in the film. because it is really, we want it to be not seen as a critique, but as a cry for help. And cry for help requires answer. So the fact that the film is now being watched by a large network like ourselves, it is we believe that it is one very good sign. But we are looking forward to listen to your thoughts, your maybe possibilities for action. And as a filmmaker and anthropologist working on the ground, I'm really looking forward to work together with you if any actions can be put together from this. But please keep West Papua from now on in your prayers, in your works, and in our work together. Thank you so much, and looking forward for the discussion.
Thank you very much, Dr. Sipri, for grounding our discussion in the realities behind the film and also calling our attention to the deeper meaning and urgency of the situation. And we surely will keep you and the entire team and people of Papua, West Papua, in our prayers. So now I invite our other panelists. We have three panelists, of which one of them has expressed her inability to attend because of the lack of connectivity of internet. So we have Dr. Hilary N. Weaver and Sister Mary Alice Maccabi to respond to our two guiding questions. First question is, from your particular perspective or standpoint, what is the most important point in the film that requires further and deeper reflection? In other words, what aspect of the film should we not overlook, and why does it matter? So the second question is, in concrete terms, what actions need to be taken in response to the situation in West Papua and to similar concerns elsewhere in the world? Here, we are looking for practical steps that governments, the international community, civil society, faith communities, religious congregations, and indigenous networks can take. So each panelist will have 7 minutes to address both questions. I will give a gentle reminder when about 1 minute remains so that everyone has an equal opportunity to contribute. After all the panelists have spoken, we will open the floor for questions, comments, and reflections from the participants. So our panelists will share what touched them most in the film and what practical actions we can take to support the people of West Papua. So I invite Dr. Hilary N. Weaver. She is a Lakota scholar, social worker, and Global Indigenous Commissioner for the International Federation of Social Workers. She is Professor Emeritus at the University of Buffalo and President of the Indigenous and Tribal Social Work Educators Association. Her teaching, research, writing, and international advocacy have centered on Indigenous peoples, cultural competence, trauma, wellness, and resilience. She has also presented her work at the United Nations Permanent Forum on Indigenous Issues many times. She has numerous publications to her credit. Dr. Weaver, from your perspective as an Indigenous scholar and global social work leader, what calls for deeper reflection in the film? And what concrete actions are needed? You have 7 minutes, and please go ahead. Welcome.
Bilamayaye, Kihani Washte. I thank you and I greet you in my Lakota language. Yes, I'm happy to share a few notable points that I'd like to emphasize, and then I'll wrap up my remarks by sharing some thoughts on actions. The first point that I'd really like to emphasize is the resilience of Indigenous peoples, and we see that demonstrated in multiple ways in this film. So often it's tempting to focus more on the difficult circumstances, the terrible things that are happening, and we tend to see Indigenous people more as passive victims. But I remind you we are standing strong. The people of West Papua are standing strong. And despite multiple genocides that are pointed out in the film, Indigenous peoples are not exterminated. I speak to you as an Indigenous person of North America, and we are still here. I want to point out that what you see in the film is not an isolated or a unique situation. The current circumstances in West Papua they're part of a larger, long-standing, ongoing colonial project. I think the film does a particularly good job of highlighting the corporate interests and the military intervention as part of the colonial project. It's not just the nation state. And we should never mistake what is happening here as development. Development should be about positive growth. It should be inclusive. It should be guided by the needs of the people. And that is not what we see here. What we see here is profit-driven. It is short-sighted. These are obviously terrible problems for Indigenous peoples. But I want to point out to you, this is a problem for all of us, human and non-human. This is not an isolated place or an isolated incident. This hurts each and every one of us. They're trying to tell us that something good is happening, that there is clean, sustainable development. This is an illusion. It's under the guise of, food, energy, security, things that we would like to see as positive. But this is destruction promoted as solutions. They're growing rice in large amounts. This is not food sovereignty. Food sovereignty never involves monocrops, where you have these huge plantations just growing rice. Clean energy is not about cutting down forests that sustain the people, and the Indigenous people, of course, but the people around the world. If we're clearing forests to plant sugarcane and palm oil, that is a false solution. And these false solutions have a failed track record that we should see. This is profit for a few disguised as development and grounded in these old colonial arguments, not innovative solutions. They are treating this as terra nullius. That's what they have always done with colonization. It's an old argument that says the land is empty or the people there are not using it well. The people of West Papua are using the land to sustain them. It is their home. It is their source of food, the root of their culture, their source of medicine. This is not an empty land. What is happening to them is atrocious. But again, I remind you, it is not just a loss for them. As a Lakota, we have a common phrase, mitakuye o yashin. We are all related. West Papua is part of the lungs of the world. Each one of us is here in a shared world. How can we stand by and let our lungs be destroyed? The destruction of West Papua is a loss for all of humanity. And of course, a loss for the natural world that sustains us, because it's not just humans on this planet. Indigenous people are the custodians of biodiversity. People manage these forests, and we all benefit from the resistance that we see in West Papua as they stand up for our shared world. As we think about actions, actions always begin with awareness. Most of us watching this film today, we are not from West Papua, but we can be a good ally. We can share what we have learned in this film. We can stand with the people of West Papua. We can bring attention to these issues and similar ones around the globe. I think that one person or one small group can make a difference. In this film, we see how the indigenous people are maintaining the forest. A clan will maintain a particular portion of the forest. And because of what one clan does, we all benefit. That's the situation that we're in now as we think of actions. The actions of one or a few can make a difference. And I encourage each of us to act from where we stand. We come together today from very different life spaces, and we can act within those spaces. So you see many of the indigenous people who are Christians raising these crosses. That is an important symbol. We see indigenous people planning the pig feast. That is part of the indigenous tradition. My colleague Cipri just reminded us that those of you who are coming from churches or are church leaders, we need to hear your voice. Those of us from different parts of the world, I think international scrutiny can help pressure Indonesia and may be much more successful at pressuring them than some of these internal actions, or we need all of these actions. I'm a social worker. I work with the International Federation of Social Workers Indigenous Commission, which is a group of Indigenous social workers. We highlight issues for social workers. Social workers are heavily involved in development in the true sense. So we can talk about what true development looks like. And it is always in partnership with indigenous peoples, with the peoples of the land, with local peoples. There must be free, prior, and informed consent. That is a principle under the United Nations Declaration of Indigenous Peoples, which, by the way, Indonesia is a signatory to that. As we have our discussion today, and after that we move forward into our daily lives, I hope that we will have a takeaway from this film. I call on each of you to ask yourself, how can I act in partnership within our shared world? We certainly don't want to do what we see in the film, where Indonesia is imposing on others for the benefit of a few in ways that sacrifice the natural world. So please, in your thinking, be concrete. Think of one thing that you can do from where you sit. If each of us does this, like the Kanaka Maoli, the indigenous Hawaiians say, we can rise like a mighty wave. So I call on each of you to be a drop in that wave, and I look forward to seeing how we will all move together. So those are my thoughts, and I look forward to hearing from the other panelists.
Thank you, Dr. Weber, for helping us to view the film through the lens of Indigenous rights, well-being, resilience, and global responsibility. Indigenous people are the custodians of the biodiversity. You showed us the danger of profit-driven development, depriving the indigenous people of their land, culture, and livelihood. But one person or a small group can make a difference. We appreciate your challenge posed to the religious and faith-based organizations to stand with the suffering. Thank you once again. And we move towards the next panelist, that is Sister Mary Alice Macab. She is a sister of Notre Dame de Namo. For more than 30 years, she worked with indigenous and rural communities in northern Brazil as a base Christian community organizer, accompanying several generations in their struggle for land rights. She has also served refugee families at the United States-Mexico border and is coordinator of the Laudato Si Action Platform team for the East-West Notre Dame province. She is the author of works that preserve the voices and sacred struggles of rural communities and women in Brazil. Sister Mary Alice, from your long experience accompanying communities in struggles for land, dignity, and care for our common home, what should we reflect upon more deeply, and what concrete actions is now required? You have 7 minutes. Please go ahead. Welcome.
Thank you very much, all of you, and I've learned so much from the participants and certainly from the film. The film is so very, very well done. It's one of the best documentaries I've seen to capture what really is happening at the grassroots level. And my first point that I would like to highlight that I think requires further reflection always is the grassroots solutions. The film depicts so well the grassroots indigenous movement motivated by faith. And some of you already mentioned that. The Red Cross movement creates a deep unity among a large number of indigenous, which in turn generates trust among them, which in turn generates the courage to act together and to resist, the resilience that we are already talking about. And Christian symbols, they use Christian symbols and indigenous rituals. And those two things seem to work together so well. Two faith systems that support each other, complementing each other, and producing a force of a faith-motivated action, of resistance and action on the ground. And also before the political forces of Indonesia. I think they were in Jakarta, protesting against agribusiness and the PSN projects. Another thing that so impressed me was the wisdom of the indigenous speakers. So much wisdom. This is something I want to go back to many, many times. Another point that I would like to highlight, it wasn't so much in this version of the pig feast, but in the original that I assisted, I was so impressed by the idea of the pig feast itself, because it shows so brilliantly how the indigenous manage and protect the forest biodiversity, where the indigenous have territories that they manage and protect, and nature is preserved. Nature is preserved where the indigenous have their territories untouched. And so they preserve it in an ecological balance. And the pig feast is such a concrete example of that, because the wild pigs and the forest live together in an ecological and cultural balance for 10 years, it's for a long time, producing an abundance, which is shared equally at the feast with the people, with the humans, and with the living beings of the forest. I was really impressed by that example. Moving on to actions. First of all, I would say that the film itself is a superb action, because as you're saying, they're reaching many, many, many people, and it so eloquently shows the incredible force of, I would say, evil, the destroyers of God's creation. Which is fed by the greed of the consumer societies. We have to go back to the consumers who are saying we need this, that, and the other thing, and we have to destroy the forest in order to have what we need, what we want, not what we need, what we want. So I say communication is so very important as an action. Also, there was a COP30, which is the UN Conference on Climate Change, that was held in Brazil in October of last year. And many indigenous peoples, there are many, many, many tribes, nations within Brazil, they organized together, which they have been doing for a long time, to defend their rights and global diversity. And they took advantage of the fact that of the COP conference, both in Belém and in Brasilia. So they had various protests, and they actually had some success because the protests forced the Brazilian Senate, which was in session simultaneously with when COP was going on, I believe, and they were about to vote on a constitutional amendment which would significantly reduce or control indigenous land rights. It was an amendment backed by agribusiness and by mining interests in the Brazilian legislature, and it was aiming to block indigenous land demarcation and open protected territories in the Amazon to further extraction. And as we have said before, indigenous lands are the best preserved areas of the rainforest, and they're essential to biodiversity and global climate stability. So the indigenous land demarcation is one of the most effective anti-deforestation tools because the indigenous people manage so well their territories. So it was important that that this protest took place, and they actually got some results. Of course, all of these political results depend so much on who's in power at the moment. This could all go away for the next election. But actually what they managed was that the vote was postponed. So the Senate wouldn't act on it because the whole world was up in Bay Lane looking at them, basically. And the indigenous were out in front of the three powers in Brasilia saying, oh, no, you're not going to approve this amendment, which would control our territories. So it was a small but significant victory. And at the moment, a number of indigenous lands are approved for demarcation in Brazil, and that's because of grassroots pressure from the people themselves. In Brazil, churches, religious communities, and social movements have tried to work together for a long time. But we know that that's always not 100%. We have religious leaders who sell out, who probably, because as it showed in the film, some of the powerful companies make donations to the church. So that's kind of what happens many times. And so you get some leaders who approve or support, and you get others that do not. That is something that has to be constantly evaluated and protested by any of us that call ourselves members of these churches. How much more time do I have? I wanted to highlight that one of our sisters, her name was Sister Dorothy Stang, and she worked for many years in the Amazon area. But in 2005, she was murdered. And the reason was because she dedicated herself to more than 30 years in defense of the Amazon forest and its people. And she taught the local farmers. They weren't necessarily local indigenous, but they were people who had migrated from other parts of Brazil where they did not have land rights. They moved up to the Amazon, hopefully to be able to have land to plant. She taught them how to plant without destroying the forest. It was called a Plan for Sustainable Development, and it was adopted at that time by the government because it looked so hopeful. However, the forces, which are the loggers, the ranchers, the miners, said, oh no, that's not going to happen. We want the whole thing for our own profit. And so Dorothy had to die for that cause. And she wasn't alone. More than 300, maybe up in the 300s, 400s of Brazilian leaders in the Amazon areas have been murdered for the same cause. Do I have more time?
Yeah, maybe one more minute.
Okay, no, I just want to say that the film also has women who are protesting, and I thought that was tremendous. And there was another example just right now in March of 26, up in an area called Xingu. There's the Xingu River is one of the most important tributaries of the Amazon. However, a Canadian company called Bellow Sun Limited wants to dig an enormous open pit gold mine in the Xingu River, which would be the largest open pit gold mine in Brazil, and they have that plan. That would extract 620 million tons of soil and rock that would be blasted and excavated from the rainforest to extract a few tons of gold. Obviously, the consequences would be devastating. So the women protested camping outside the offices there in the area, demanding that the mining permit be revoked, that the Canadian company not have that. Now, I'm not even sure whether they have had success, but they did it, and they will do it, and they will keep on doing it to get their voices out. So I will end here by just saying, Sister Dorothy's message was, the death of the forest is the end of our lives. And that's her saying, and it's been repeated over and over and has gone to the four corners of our globe. And the message of all Indigenous people is, as guardians of ancestral wisdom, we maintain a harmonious relationship with nature, of which we are a part. Our traditional ways of life contribute to preservation of ecosystems, biodiversity, water conservation, and the global fight against climate change. So let us pray for these marvelous Indigenous people of Papua, whose faith carries them and gives us a message and gives us courage to make our contribution and give them voice. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Sister Mary Alice. The death of the forest is the end of our lives. And thank you for reminding us that accompaniment, faith, and care for our common home must be expressed through sustained solidarity and action. Thanks for your practical suggestions to address the problem based on your experience in Brazil. And thank you. And one of the panelists, Edith Lopez Alvarado, couldn't join us due to the bad internet connection at her place. So apologies for that. And I thank once again all the panelists for their thought-provoking intervention and challenging reflections. We now invite everyone to join the conversation. So you may share a question, comment, or brief reflection in the chat. You may also use the raise hand function in Zoom or raise your actual hand on camera, and we will invite you to unmute. So when you speak, please briefly introduce yourself and, if appropriate, indicate the panelist to whom your question is directed. To allow us as many voices as possible, kindly keep your intervention short and frame questions concisely. We have almost 15 minutes for interaction, and I invite all of you to interact. Yeah. Yes, Father Vincent.
While watching the movie, I saw one diocese supporting this project, the industrialists. I can't understand what is the reason behind this.
Maybe Cypri or Paul, anyone from, yeah.
Father Paul, you want to answer, or? Okay, maybe I will start. So I think a deeper reason is that a kind of racist and still patronizing view on indigenous communities, that they are still backward and in need of development. So apparently there's that kind of view to indigenous Christian communities is still very strong. That they need development, they need modern agriculture, they need government to intervene, and that the fact that they are living in the forest is a sign of backward, and the bishop really wants to collaborate with the government to bring development. But deep down, one of the elements is that the bishop is not a Papuan, and he's from different part of the island, and do not really incorporate the local Melanesian base of life as part of the policy. So that's but also the church is in need of for money for development. So that's why, for example, taking the money to build the seminary to educate also indigenous kids. So this kind of like old-fashioned way of looking at indigenous people is still intact, even within Catholic Church. So it is really sad that yeah, this is the fact.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Kirti, can you find if someone?
I know Isabel had her hand up shortly after Hillary spoke. I wonder, Isabel, if you still have that question and you might want to turn your video on and ask it at this time.
Excuse me. First of all, it was I raised it by mistake. But my question is, the situation is so complicated because it involves the government itself, who is supposed to protect people and to stop that, and we are all engaged in fighting things like actions like deforestation because of the climate change. If the government itself is the one who is leading the actions and very involved, the church also, we are talking about the church, but the church that can accompany the people, that's the role, and educating them, accompany what really the government is the one to really stop that. But if it is involved, so I'm wondering myself, what is really the strong action? I asked the question to all the speakers because I'm not clear what is really the strong action that will stop it. If it stops there, it may help also to stop what is going on in other parts of the world. Thank you.
Thanks, Isabel. And if I may just jump in quickly before we hand that over to our speakers, I just want to elevate. Sister Rose asked an extremely similar question in the chat box, again, posing the question of how can we help? What can we do? And what ideas do the speakers have?
Say something.
Please go ahead, Sister Mary Alice.
Right. I'll try to respond. I will go back again to the importance of grassroots, because in my experience, things only change when the people are organized. Solutions do not come from the top down, they come from the bottom. I really do believe that. I really do believe it. So the film is so important because it really does focus on that. Also, I did see somewhere in the film, there was a Laudato Si poster right next to one of those red crosses. That caught my eye twice. And I said, thank you, Pope Francis, you really gave it a try. And it even reached Papua, which is, to me, a hope sign. However, Pope Francis' message of we have to pay attention to what's happening to our planet, we must care for our common home, his message did not get out. It was ignored even by church leadership. It was not preached from our pulpits. At least here in the United States, it was not. I don't know if that's true everywhere. In Brazil, I know they did somewhat better, but that wasn't an effort. But look what happened to it. And why did it happen? Because it was targeting the problem, which was a systemic problem that's a problem of the governments and the corporations. And so there's just so much power there that there were people that were afraid to give voice to let that message of Laudato Si get out. But I'm at least encouraged that it reached those people and they have that sign and they put up their 1,800 crosses. And I think it's spectacular that they did that. What I think we should do maybe is work hard at getting these indigenous groups to speak to each other. Like you mentioned somewhere along the line of the countries that are most, that have the forests. I think it's 3 of them that are on the South American continent, and then Congo, and then Indonesia. So maybe at the UN level, one of the things that would happen is that to get indigenous groups from these various countries talking to each other and sharing ideas and giving force to one another. Maybe that's already happening. I don't know that, but that's a suggestion I would make.
Thank you, Sister Marie-Alice.
Hillary,
did you also want to respond to that?
Yeah.
Sorry, Roy.
Yes, I would like to briefly respond to that because it is a challenge. What do we do when the government is the problem? Well, governments should represent the people. And I think we have very clear evidence in this film that the government is acting at the behest of a few very, very rich individuals and families. We should follow the money trail. We should see where the power is. And those of you who are in Indonesia should challenge your government for not acting on behalf of the people. Wherever we are, we should all be challenging stereotypes. If the government is using this excuse, or the diocese that supported the government is using the excuse that, oh, gee, these people are living in the forest, they must be backwards, they need development. From wherever we are, we can challenge that stereotype, that racism. We have heard Marie-Alice speak about, these indigenous people in the forest are probably doing a whole lot better than many of us. They are living in balance. They are protecting this world that we all live in. So from wherever we are, we can challenge stereotypes, we can hold governments accountable, and especially follow the money and follow the power, because that's where the lasting change is going to come from, if we challenge that money and that power. So those are my few brief thoughts.
Thank you. And we have one person who has raised hand, Murphy, Cleona Murphy. Yeah.
Hi, thank you. And thank you all for this opportunity to learn together today and to talk with each other, with peers of like-minded people. I'm Cleona Murphy from the Irish Association of Social Workers, and I suppose one of the things that today has really highlighted for me is increasing my awareness and my ability to explain what is of value and what we lose, because I suppose what the greenwashing of destruction that I've heard about, and I suppose that when I hear about biofuels, I'm thinking, oh, that has to be good. We're moving away from fossil fuels, we're protecting the earth, we're reducing our emissions, but learning about what we lose through this essentially greenwashing of destruction, and what we're destroying is so utterly irreplaceable and invaluable. And again, just to pick up on Hillary's point about the question, then for me is to better understand two benefits, because obviously if I'm hearing that we're moving towards biofuels, we're feeding people, we're developing security, of course that all has to be a good thing, and nobody's challenging that. It's the how at what cost, and the value has just become skewed in terms of a few benefiting from this. So I suppose my learning from today is to become more literate and to develop a better understanding and to be able to articulate what I'm thinking in terms of the rights of Indigenous people, but not only their rights. I think as you were a couple of the speakers were highlighting about, we're all losing. There are no winners except a few people. So that's really all I have to say. So thanks again.
Thank you, Murphy, for your comments. We are, running short of time. It's time to conclude. And I know some of you are at the midnight. Okay. So keeping in mind that just a few minutes more, please bear with us. And just concluding, we were reminded that development cannot be called progress if it destroys indigenous lands, cultures, communities, and nature. We also heard a clear call to listen to indigenous peoples, defend their rights, and turn our concerns into practical action. May what we have seen and heard today lead us to stronger solidarity with the people of West Papua. Thank you once again to all our panelists, especially Sipri, the co-director of the film, participants, organizers, technical assistants, and partner organizations. Thanks to JECO team, Katie and Teresa for organizing this event. Special thanks to Paul, who initiated the whole process months before. It is now my pleasure to invite Henry, the UN representative of Claretians in New York, to offer the closing remarks and call to action. Henry, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you for joining us. Good morning, good evening, depending we are. Thank you to our partner, our speakers and filmmakers who made this event is possible. The film we have watching is more than a story. It is a call to listen. It is a call to action, a call to care, a call to act. Indigenous people are not only protecting their own communities, they are protecting forests, they are protecting rivers, they are protecting biodiversity, they are protecting our common home. Their wisdom teaching us that the earth is not a resource to exploit. It is a gift to cherish. Today, many indigenous communities face serious threats. Human right violation, extractive industry continue to destroy ecosystem. In the film, we can show this reality. Is a huge, very big, heavy situation, but it is not only in Indonesia and West Papua. It's the reality in different communities: Honduras, Panama, Congo, South Sudan, Nigeria, Colombia. Too often, they also violate human rights and force community from their ancestral lands. This is important. Development cannot come to the cost of human dignity or the destruction of creation. We need a different path. We need a different action right now. We need create the common strategy for advocate in different platforms. A path based of justice, respect, and care of our common home. Finally, let us recognize the power of the film. Film can reach years away the report and statistics canon. They make invisible reality visible. They give a voice to those who are too often unheard. They inspire dialogue. They inspire solidarity. They are inspire action. May today's conversation not end here. May it encourage us to stand with the indigenous people, with the indigenous group, with the Indigenous People Forum at the UN. May I strengthen our commitment to protect our common home. Before we close, thank you to everyone who made this event possible. Thank you to our speakers for sharing your knowledge and experience. Thank you for the filmmaker for bringing this important story to the world. Thank you to our interpreters for helping us communicate across language. Thank you to our logistical team, our volunteer, and everyone who working behind the scenes. And thank you to each of one you for your presence, your support, and commitment to our common home. Last word is create a new strategy for advocate, for give the voice for the communities. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Henry, for the closing remarks. May the voices and experiences shared today remain with us and move us towards solidarity and action with the indigenous peoples of West Papua and indigenous communities everywhere. So this concludes our event. Have a good day or evening or good night, wherever you are joining us from. Thank you. Thanks a lot.
Thank you so much.